Welcome to the Project Reinvented podcast. I'm your host, Lachlan John McRae, and today join me on this empowering journey with Nicholas Townsend Smith. He is a true giant in mindset mastery. He's a powerhouse mindset coach, speaker, and author who is creating a worldwide movement guiding individuals in rewriting their stories and creating a life they dream of. He has a master's in industrial and organizational psychology. His impact is felt globally, coaching thousands and collaborating with organizations for monumental success. As the co-founder of Wake Up with the Giants TV, the League of Giants, the Tribe of Giants, and the Stretch Revolution, Nick's influence extends far and wide. He is the author of The Giants and the Smalls, The Art of Accomplishment, and Sowing Seeds. So in this episode, we explore the transformative power of shadow work, the 12 Journeys framework, the fear of failure, the balance between giving and receiving, creating legacy, and the giant mindset. We'll give you practical steps for those who are looking to become giants. So get comfortable as we unravel the wisdom, resilience, and the path to success. This is not just a podcast, it's a blueprint for transformation. So join us for Nick as we dive deep. Your journey of reinvention is quite remarkable. Okay, and you know, it was a long time ago that you were at such a low point in your life. 2008 happens, the market crashes, you file for bankruptcy. You know, you said that your wife had lost all respect for you. And 2009, you're going to this food bank and you get a call from this discussion, which basically has sparked a global movement. Do you mind going in and telling us about this conversation and what transpired after that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So back in 2009, my business had failed. I was trying to build a coaching practice. I wasn't very good at it. I was speaking. I thought I wanted to become a speaker. Somebody heard me speak and they said, you need to meet this gentleman named Steve Hardison. So I sent him a message and I said, yeah, I'll do that. I didn't know anything about him. And he happened to call me when I was in the parking lot of a food bank here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And instead of going in, I sat and I talked with him for over an hour, and he essentially put me on his shoulder and stood up. Here I was carrying the weight of the world. I think of Atlas, where Atlas is carrying the weight of the world, and I feel significantly small, right, in my life. And here this man takes time out of his day. He doesn't know me. He sits with me in this parking lot, stands up essentially with me on his shoulder, shows me my potential. And I don't remember much from the conversation, but I remember asking him a question. And this is what I said. I said, can you? And before I could ask the question, he says, yes. And I said, how can you say yes if you don't know what I'm going to ask? And he said, there's nothing you can ask that's bigger than me. And
Wow.
that really hit. It's like, what do you mean? There's nothing that's bigger than you? There's nothing I can ask that you can do anything? Seemed pretty arrogant to me, right? But he meant it. If you know Steve Hardison, he doesn't mince words. He literally can do anything he says he's going to do. And that was profound.
And just from, your point of view back then, because you're at a very low point in your life, and this guy is, saying these words, and you said it was a bit of arrogance, but you believed him, didn't you? You believed that this guy was the real deal.
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that this guy was saying the truth and that was available for me. And years later, he clarified that it's not just that he can do it. It's that there are enough people in this world that if he can enroll them in his vision, then there's really nothing off the table that we can't do. And it's us who set the limitations. And so that conversation became foundational for everything that followed. So my life didn't change drastically. It took me over a decade to even anchor in what he was talking about. But it became foundational for a book that I wrote called The Giants and the Smalls. And that really was sparked from that conversation and the book Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. I remember I was driving to work up in Park City. I listened to that book and I thought, man, I could write this. And so I did. I thought, what would I write about? If I were to write a book like this, what would I write about? And the book came like a download. it just came so fast. I had to just capture it. I had a voice recorder. I would capture it. And, the metaphor of the story is that we all are born giants, but we're born small, we're born equal, but we have the potential of becoming a giant. And I wanted to demonstrate to myself and to my kids that we are all capable of greatness. And so I wrote this book from the perspectives of many of the greats that I had met with, like Steve Hardison, Dina Layton, Steve Chandler, and many others who really just put me on their shoulders and stood up and showed me my potential.
And you know what? I think it's what you've done is amazing. You know, the whole story of Remy and Rip, because one of my mentors, he always says the teachings that he's taught, he uses that for standing on the shoulder of giants, because everything that we learn, and it's going to move us forward in life. Now, sometimes people come up with new things, but most of the time it's stuff that we learn from people who have walked that walk. And
Yeah.
that's what I know you speak a lot about, and that's what I really kind of wanted to dive into today is the philosophy and the teachings that you embody now, because the book that you've wrote, that book, The Giants and the Smalls, I'm getting that personalized for my children, because it's I try to teach them this stuff, and they're young, they're 7 and 9, but in a form which is written to them in a book, then they will, take it in a lot easier than me just speaking words to them. And to get
Yeah.
them, because this is what I think you need to get children young, because, in my opinion, schools don't, and I'm not putting schools down here. I says I don't believe schools encourage creativity and the building the belief in themselves. And I think your book is a start to get that conversation going. For so they can reach their highest potential.
We can definitely, if you look at the metaphors are powerful because every time you read them, they change based on who you are when you read them. And as a metaphor, the giants and the smalls, every time you read this book, you're going to read it based on where you're at in your life. So if you're feeling insignificant and small, you might see yourself in the eyes of the small. And if you're feeling giant in your life, you might see yourself through the eyes of the giant. You might look at the metaphors and understand them a little differently as you evolve. And what we know about kids is up until the age of 7, they're sponges. They're absorbing everything that we put in there, everything without resistance to it. So anything that culture or society wants to plug in, they're adapting to that or assimilating it. And they think that's who they are. And when we really step back from everything, we see that we all have potential. It's like the acorn. The acorn doesn't have to go find itself to become the oak tree. It's already equipped. Lao Tzu says that thousands of forests spring from a single acorn, right?
Yep,
And
it's
we are
crazy.
that.
Because you're using the same kind of wording as my mentor used, literally the exact same wording with the acorn, because that's what he talks about,
Mm,
planting seeds of scarcity. So if you can't expect to get an abundant forest by planting seeds of scarcity. And
mm.
with the children, they, like, you're right, their self-conscious comes on at the age of 7, if based on, I don't know the exact terminology, but that's when they become starting to question things, mortality, stuff like that. So up until that age, you're right, they're just taking everything in. And for me, that's
Yeah.
why I've started this journey 5 years ago, and I want to bring my kids along with it. I want to take them
Mm,
on this journey, and because I've looked for books, and I have bought a couple of other books which, try and teach them in an indirect way by through stories. But the giants and the small, I even told my wife, and she was all over the idea. So that's one of their
oh,
Christmas presents, is the personalized book, because you can get that on the website. And for everything that we'll talk about, I'll put links in the description for the book and everything else. But just to go back a little bit, Nick, see, you were obviously relatively successful before the crash. You had a master's degree in psychology, I think it was.
yeah.
And, so what was your childhood like? We're talking about childhood, how did you
Oh,
get to that point of, the kind of the lowest point?
yeah. And the degree came after the the crash. It's, if you look at my childhood and my development, my dad died when I was 2 years old. I was number 9 of 11 kids. My mom was mentally ill. She struggled with mental illness. And, so I experienced a lot of neglect growing up. I had siblings who cared for me, but siblings shouldn't be parentified. And so it wasn't ideal growing up. We were a poor family. We didn't have the opportunities. I know I developed ways of being by witnessing my world. I would watch my mom and how she would respond and how love would be conditioned on how she was feeling. And if she even had room for it, with 11 kids, is a lot of time. I'm not faulting my mom, but I'm recognizing where I developed some of these behaviors at a young age, and they carried through and they became repeating patterns, and I wasn't even aware of them. So I would live a certain way, in relationship, with money, with just about every facet of my life was dictated by my development. I thought that was me. So I go around living this incredibly small life, way below my potential, feeling somewhat like a victim of my life, reacting and reporting on my life, not creating it, and wondering why am I feeling so small? Why are some people living, and you'll see these questions in the book, such giant lives while I'm living this small one? How is it that they're so seemingly easy or able to just create anything they imagine without limitation? And here I am stuck in these patterns. And so that's where the story really came from, is how do I myself overcome that? How do I teach my kids so they don't have to go through this? How do I teach others so they don't have to go through it? Some of us are grown-ups, body, physically, but mentally we never got to develop, right?
Yep, agree with
So
you there.
how do we change that, right?
So what was obviously you've got the manuscript, and then it took another kind of event to kickstart the publishing of the book. But before you
Yeah.
published the book, in between 2009, where you've written the book, these behaviors and these thought patterns that you had, were you continuing to work on these, or did this come a little bit later on? What were the
Okay.
processes that you done to, observe these and overcome these behaviors and thought patterns?
Well, it was almost like when I met with Steve Hardison in the parking lot, that was the awakening moment. And being awake, I can promise you, isn't the most easy thing in the world. It's challenging because now you're aware of what you do and you still do it. And so I ended up, my wife at the time said, you need to change some things or our relationship's going to change. And so we made the agreement that I would go back to school and get a job and, kind of put the coaching on hold. So I did, in 2009, when I wrote the book, I thought this is going to be an overnight success. I'm going to write this book and it'll just take off and it'll, change the world. And I had this grand vision of what this book was going to do in the world. And 2011, I run a Kickstarter campaign to pay for the images, and I have this lofty $10,000 goal, and I raise $800. And so I can't, I couldn't afford to do the imagery, and so I end up going back to school and I shelf this. I put it on the shelf and it collects dust for years, almost a decade. In 2019, my wife and I got divorced, and that spun me down. I got extremely depressed. I started sharing online my journey. I just decided, what, I'm gonna share where I'm at. And on Facebook, you can go back about 4 years ago and see all of my videos just documenting this journey of climbing back out. And I needed something to keep me here in this world. It was so dark. And I never acted on anything that would, hurt myself. But man, I had thoughts. I'm like wondering, why am I even here? What's the point of all this? I started paying for illustrations. When our marriage got hard, I paid for one illustration a month, and I just started paying for them. And it took me over a year to pay for all the illustrations in the book. And in 2019, we got divorced, and I was running this sales business, and I was thinking, that's what I do to provide. And I go to this sales meeting, and Richard Paul Evans walks in. He's a 40 times New York Times bestseller, 40 million copies sold, walks into this meeting, random meeting. And I knew immediately I needed to shift directions, and I dropped everything and put all of my attention back into the book. I dropped everything that I was doing on the sideline and put it back into the book. And in 2020, we launched the book March 17th, right when COVID hit. We were supposed to do a live event to launch the book. We did our Kickstarter campaign. March 17th, the entire world shuts down.
Yeah. Couldn't make that up, eh? So,
Yeah.
now see do you think, I'm a big believer in everything happens for us. When we look at it, life is happening for us, not to us. So when you wrote the book, and then obviously there's a big period before it was released, do you think that that helped you in some type of way? Or do you think it stopped you from growing quicker?
I needed to grow. I wasn't ready
Yeah.
for the release of this book. And even now I still look at it. Some of the delays that I've seen in my life, it's like I needed to grow in certain ways for these to even be realized. The 12 journeys came about 2 years after the book was published. They were always in there from the beginning, but they weren't, I couldn't see them. And so they were realized after the fact. My growth, going through the divorce had me awaken to who I was being in the world. The world never changes. The world is always paradise. The world is always full of everything we need to create anything we can imagine. We change within it. Our view of it changes. So we end up suffering, like Byron Katie says, in paradise. And it's not like paradise changed. We're just suffering in it because of who we think we are. So I think
I
that's
love it.
where I needed an awakening, right? To really see how am I showing up? Who am I being? Still, I have awakenings. Like, how am I showing up in the different facets of my life? When it comes to relationship, when it comes to my health, when it comes to finances, how am I showing up? Because I might be a giant in one area. When I work with CEOs, they're giants in the boardrooms and they're smalls in everything else that matters, right?
Yeah,
And so it's not like you're a giant and you're all of a sudden a giant everywhere. It's like you're a giant in one area, you're small in another.
yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. I've never actually looked at it from that way, because there's I remember being in sales, car sales. I think you were kind of in a similar type of field, and you would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
the top salesman in the branch, but then you would go to the award ceremony and you had all these guys who were like, and I would think I was the top
yeah,
man, and then you go to these and there's like guys who are numbers 10 times yours, and I'm like, wow, I'm not that much of a big guy. So
yeah.
obviously you've
Titans.
had a massive mindset evolution, and
Yeah.
what would you say, if you can think back, in the early days of your shifting your mindset? Because I'm trying to reach people on here, and having amazing people like you on, is to try and get them to identify, you know there's a lot of people out there who feel that they're broken, and I don't believe
Mm.
anyone's broken. I believe it's just they haven't found what works for them yet. So back on, at the beginning, what was the kind of mindset shifts that you started with?
Well, I'm going to go through the 12 journeys for this because number one, the first journey is non-consciousness. And it's recognizing that every one of us has a human brain that is untouchable in the universe. 2.5 petabytes of information, 86 billion neurons, 85 billion glial cells. Every night it flushes out all these toxins and bad connections, and it cleans it up every night. And here we have the ability to learn anything in the world, yet we've chosen to be a certain thing in the world based on our family, our history, our value systems, our ethics, our morals, our religions, our political views. We start to say, this is who I am. And then we go around the world acting as if that's who we are, never questioning the automations that we've programmed in, even while we have an unlimited mind that we haven't tapped into fully. We go around saying we've learned all we can learn, or I don't have the brain for that, or I don't have the potential for that. Thinking our minds are broken, and therefore our mind says, okay, we're broken. And so it acts as if, right? It's not even broken, but it has this power to be whatever you program it to be. And so we go around with these automations thinking that's who we are in this world. We live out these small lives, just like the character in my book. We act as if there's nothing available for us, like we could never be a giant. Giants are special. They're unique. I'm just a regular old small, right? Never questioning that. And the reality is every one of us has the ability to question that. And the moment we question it, you know what we do? We hurt ourselves with what we question. We see where we're at, we create an awareness around it, and we get mad at ourselves for even having it. So we have all these automations that we programmed in, and then we're pissed off at ourselves, and we judge ourselves, and we're hard on ourselves, and we shame ourselves, and we guilt ourselves over things that were programmed in, instead of just recognizing, oh crap, I did that, and changing it, right? My favorite definition of forgiveness is to not cause additional harm. And so here we go, and we have these automations, and we wake up to them, and then we beat ourselves up over it. We cause ourselves additional harm over things we weren't even aware of. And then when we become aware of them, then we beat ourselves up over it. So the goal, the second journey, is awareness.
Yeah. Is this what you talk about, being the conscious, the observer?
Yes. Yeah. So you become an observer of your life. You get curious. Where did that come from? Why do I have that? Why do I keep doing the same things, expecting different results? Why do I act insanely in my life? Why do I do this? Why do I do this in a relationship?
So how do you use that in your coaching? So if you've got somebody who comes in and you're at that first step where they've been unconscious and they're starting to wake up and they're having a bit more awareness, so how do you work with them? What would you do?
Well, so I love the idea of the theory of internal family systems, that we all have parts that have been developed, right? So we have conversation. What I like to do is look at those parts that have been developed, those awarenesses, those automations, and see why they're there. Have a conversation with them. In the book, The Giants and the Smalls, the small goes to the land of the giants. He finds a giant. He's scared. This is a giant. Climbs the giant, gets up on the shoulder. This is a brave thing. Yells out, "Mr. Giant, I'm here." The giant doesn't tell him to go away, doesn't shoo him away. The giant invites him onto his hand, and they have a conversation, right? And so when you think of the internal parts of yourself that have come all this way to come to you and say, "Look, I'm here. I'm ready to grow." And you say to them, "I don't want you here. You don't belong here. I hate you." They go back to the land of the smalls, and they continue to act small behind the scenes. You will never see them again. But if you can invite those parts onto your hand and have a conversation with them, you can help them to grow. They were never trying to cause harm to you. Every part that you have was trying to protect you. It was developed for your protection and your development. That you did what you knew how to do when you were 3 years old or 7 years old. The problem is it just never got to develop the way it could have. And so to invite it on your hand and have a dialogue with it, right? And talk to it allows you to get curious about, tell me more. Why did you do that? Where did you come from? How did we do that? Can we update that? Right?
Yep. It's and these parts are parts like, the inner child, or we've got so many different parts of us that and a lot of these, because the beliefs that we have, these beliefs at one point were useful to us, back when we needed them, and they're no longer useful to us now. And I look at it, for example, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't belong. At one point, they might have protected us and kept us safe because, we needed them at that point, but we still hold on to them even when they no longer any use to us. So, and a lot of this is done unconsciously. So with these unconscious thoughts and perceptions and beliefs, how do they impact our sense of self and contributing to us feeling small?
Yeah, so we start to believe our thoughts, but not only that, we feel the sensations that are generated by those thoughts, and those sensations in the body anchor in the idea that this is reality. So if I have the thought that I am unworthy, and then I have this sensation in my body that feels like a loss of energy, a feeling of insecurity, a feeling of anxiety, then I start to believe that that's true and that's my reality. And so instead of really looking at the emotions, because the third journey is grief. And the reason I chose that word for the journey is grief comes from the Latin gravare, which means weightiness. And so these heavier emotions are for feeling, right? So we don't feel our emotions. What we tend to do is numb out to them. We don't want to express them. We stuff them. We're taught to stuff them. Don't cry in front of me. I was taught as a kid, quit crying.
Yeah.
Go in
But
the other room if you're going to cry. Deal with it on your own and come back when you're a good kid, right?
yeah, it's
And
crazy that and I think that hopefully that's starting. People are starting to see that how much of a negative impact, because I think our generation, that was big boys don't cry, you don't show your
yes,
emotions, and I know that I'm teaching my children differently, and I hope other people are starting to. But yeah, it's that was how it was back then, and
yeah.
with before we jump onto the grief and acceptance, what's your view on our thoughts and feelings? Because our thoughts and feelings, even though we feel them and we have them, they don't give a representation of reality. It's just how we are perceiving it. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah, we have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. That's about 400 thoughts a minute. And we pay attention to the thoughts that align with our perception. So we don't look for the truth in the world, we look for agreement. So when we're out there searching and scanning our environment, we're looking for things that align with who we think we are. So it still comes back to our perception of who we think we are. And based on that identity that we've created, then we start to experience our world and latch on to the things that align with that. And so then we see it as truth because we get confirmation in the world. And with that many thoughts a day, you think you're going to find some confirmation one way or the other?
Yep,
Like, guaranteed
100%.
you will find something that aligns with your way of thinking, right?
I think is it Joe Dispenza and What the Bleep says that we get 400 billion. Uh, I think it was something like 400 billion, but the own mind only recognizes 2,000, and it recognizes the same 2,000 every day. So we are
Yeah,
actually getting bits of
the
information.
bits. Yeah, there's so much going on around us that it's too much. And so we narrow our focus to what aligns with us.
Yeah,
And so
and
if
that's
you
a
want to go around telling the world that you're broken, then that's what you see in the world. If you want to go around and tell the world I'm healing, then that's what you see in the world. If you want to go around and build a dream, then that's what you see in the world. And you know, if you look at my journey, it's like when I started this journey, I could only see as far as my past. I
yeah.
could only see as far ahead as I thought I could from my past. Now I've learned to get fully present, allow my past to be what it was, and know that there's nothing written out here. Hasn't happened yet. So it's all open. And so now I try to imagine beyond what is and what has been.
And how did you, what was the process? Because we'll go through, because I really love the journey, because I think the journey is an important thing that people need to hear, especially your take on it, because I very much align with your take on it. And
Yeah.
but see the identity now, a, a lot of people get confused. Like they think the ego's a bad thing, but my belief is the ego's not bad. It's just our vehicle. It's just we have it. It's not going to go anywhere. But they talk negative about it, and they want it to die. Essentially, when it comes to the ego, how do you deal with the ego, and what's your view on it? And ego identity.
Okay, so here's one of the challenges of being a coach. Like, we have coaches that we can coach with, but a lot of times they're a lot more money than what I charge, right? And so like access to them is limited. I've been working with AI recently, and I created applications that allow me to have conversation and dialogue with myself from the 12 journeys framework. And so now I can talk voice to voice with an AI application that allows me to process using my own framework and my mindset to really challenge my mindset, like what's showing up for me. And
Wow.
so the idea of ego is simply listening to the voices that are coming up, the automations. Egos are it seems to be the automation that we've created, right? That we've anchored in, and it's become so easy that we don't have to fight it to change it. Right. It just gets a free ride and a free run. And so anytime we go to change anything, we have resistance to change because it takes effort. It takes energy. The body is designed for efficiency. So you have, glial cells that automate your behaviors so that you don't have to think about them. And the more, like Alfred North Whitehead says, the more you can do without thinking, the more you can do.
Yeah.
And so,
I love what you said there, the automation and the ego's just like, because it is. The ego's just like our automation system. That's just, I've never heard. That's amazing. Yeah. But it's because the resistance to change, and because the ego wants to stay the same. Is that right, Nick?
yeah,
Is that what you're saying? The ego wants to stay the same. It doesn't want to change. And that's why the resistance to change. So that's why when people go to do something new, they have this resistance or this fear or this self-sabotage that stops them
everywhere.
taking the action. So what would you say to somebody who, for example, like I'll give you myself, I wanted to start a podcast for 3 years, and it was something that I really wanted, but I kept telling myself, who's going to come on your show? You're not good enough. You'll sound this, that, and the next thing. And eventually, I just took the action. But it took me 3 years to take that action, and I beat myself up for 3 years. So when somebody's coming to you and they want to make the change and they've got this resistance, what's your advice to them, to to move forward?
Well, number one is recognize that you're resisting. Like, wake up to your resistance, and it's okay that you're resisting. And acceptance is the first step. Like, if truthfully, if we look at the 12 journeys, acceptance is a pinpoint on a map. It's like on a GPS, you see the X that shows where you are, or the dot that shows where you are on the map, and then you have where you're going. But the most important part is, where am I? Because if I don't know where I'm at, then it doesn't matter where I'm going. It's like Alice in Wonderland. The cat asks, where would you like to go? And she says, I don't know. And he says, well, then any path will do.
Yeah.
But to recognize where we're at first, right? The resistance to change is to acknowledge that I have a resistance to change. Here I am on the map. Here's what I'm doing. And then when you have that acknowledgement, then you can go back and look at, what's coming up. Where did that come from? What is my awareness? What emotions are coming up? And then can I accept that? Can I create gratitude around this? What's positive about my resistance to change? Why is this a good thing? Right? And then when we get to the point that we elevate, we want to anchor it in. It's like you're climbing a wall, and you'll notice that these people that climb, these big towers to put the light in, they have anchors, and they'll anchor themselves in so they don't fall backward, right? Well, the tools of empowerment are designed to lock you in so that you don't backstep, right?
Yep.
So when you lock in these new behaviors, you empower them and you automate them and you get good at them so that you don't backslide back to your old behaviors and patterns. And so being in resistance is a pretty normal thing. Staying in resistance is where we have choice.
Yep. And this is what you talk
Right.
about, embracing the sadness and fear to create change, and
Yeah.
this is why, the acceptance of our current circumstances is so important. And I think it's about being 100% honest about where you are and not sugarcoating it. If you're in a shit place, you're in a shit place. There's no point
Yes.
lying to yourself. And, and I think I used to pretend that life wasn't that bad, but I was stuck in addiction. My wife was about to divorce me. My life was crumbling, but I had this false illusion that, it wasn't that bad. And I wasn't that bad when reality was I'd let myself crumble. So I think, is that
Yeah.
what you mean by just being 100% honest with you? This is where I am, I need to accept this. I'm here, but I don't have to stay here.
I saw a study that was done. I didn't see the study, but I heard about a study. Let's say it that way. That's probably better. That the chemical response that is most measurable in people isn't love, it isn't fear, it's authenticity. That when we're honest with ourselves, that's the thing that can be measured outside of us more than any other sensation in the body is authenticity. And most of us are lying to ourselves about where we're at. We're lying to others about where we're at because we're afraid of shame. We're afraid of being guilty. We're afraid of, we have this fear. I think as Lisa Feldman Barrett said, that we feel anxiety when we feel like we're not measuring up to the ideals we think others have. We feel depression when we don't live up to our own ideals. And so in both cases, it's us making up this story and then measuring ourselves against our own ideals or the ideals we think others have for us. And it's all made up in us. And so being authentic and being honest, and honesty, if you look at the word, it means ownership. Take ownership of your entire experience. Doesn't mean you're telling the truth. You're taking ownership.
Yeah.
So that's authenticity. It's like what's going on in here is also going on out here.
Just
I don't have to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Just be you.
And
right?
Because I think you say self-acceptance. That's the cornerstone of personal development. It's accepting yourself. So, with that self-acceptance, how did you, do that? How did you, kind of establish that in your own journey? And then how do you help other people do it?
I do it constantly, every day. And number one transformation is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is acceptance. So if you don't know you're doing it, there's nothing to accept. If you're automated and unconscious or non-conscious, then what are you going to accept? You don't even know it's there, right? So number one is wake up to what you're doing. Number two is don't beat yourself up over it. Don't cause yourself additional harm. Remember forgiveness. So acceptance is simply the acknowledgement and the awareness and the allowance that I am where I am, but it's not a statement of resignation. It's not a statement of victimhood. It's not a statement of, I really love this, I want to stay here forever. It's just an acknowledgement that you are where you are. It is what it is. It was what it was. And people hate those phrases. It is what it is. Like that sounds like a victim statement, right? No, it's where it truly is. Prove me otherwise. It is what it is. Tell me otherwise. Like, show me. If you can put that in a cup and bring it to me, like Steve Hardison says, then he'll pay you $10,000. I'll have him pay you $10,000. But the idea is you can't collect it, right?
No, you
can't collect it.
And see, when you spoke a minute ago about living up to your own ideals and your own ideas and other people's. Now that is when somebody's in that position where they're feeling, anxious or whatever they're feeling in that moment. Is there a specific practice that you would teach them? Journaling, meditation? Is there something that you would help them with to kind of to help them become a bit more clear?
Yeah, so the journey of empowerment is all about finding tools that work for you. So if you look at, there's a book called Calming the Emotional Storm, and it's about dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's about distractions. It's about finding tools that help soften the emotions so that you can do your work. So anything can become a distraction, and distractions are actually good for you. They can help you to soften the emotions so that you can do your work. I'll sit and play TikTok, for a little bit. I try not to numb out, but it's engineered for numbing out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I go a little longer than I should, or I'll play a video game, or I'll call a friend, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll put my feet in the dirt, or I'll listen to some music, or I'll put on some meditation. So there's not, for me, one thing that I do. I do what I need to do in the moment to help me soften the emotions so that I can do my work. But I never run from my emotions. If I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling anxious, and I acknowledge it. I call it out, like, oh, there's anxiety. Barry McDonough, one of my favorite authors, he wrote the book D-A-R-E, Dare, talks about diffusing the emotion. So there's anxiety again. Diffuse it, break it up into little parts. There's anxiety. Accept that you're there, run toward it, and engage in a new behavior. Right. And so that's the power that we have, is we have old patterns that we've established, and those are going to run.
Yeah.
But when we recognize them, if we can move them in a new direction, then we start to establish new pathways, and that old pathway loses its power. The energy no longer flows there, right? We could still see the stream or the road or the dirt or the pathway, but energy no longer flows there. You see a dead tree and you can recognize that tree is evidence that energy once flowed there, but the tree is dead. Energy no longer flows there.
Yep.
It flows to the trees that have energy, right? So it's up to us to redirect the energy.
And it comes back down to awareness again, isn't it? The awareness is, again, it's having that awareness,
Yep.
to identify it. And Eckhart Tolle, I was reading The New Earth the other day, and he says when you're feeling these emotions, it's important to not to say that I am anxious. It's important to identify it, but not, put yourself and saying I am anxious, or saying, I feel anxiety, or I feel anger, rather than saying I'm angry or I'm anxious. What's your take on that?
Well, you definitely want to separate it from your identity, right? So you might say something like, there is anxiety. Oh, that's anxiety, but it's outside of you. You're recognizing that it's separate from you, not an identity of who you are. Because are you really anger? If you say, I am angry, like, are you really that? Is that who you are? Or is that what's occurring in your body?
Yeah,
And so,
because
yeah.
it's because I think the I'm, it's, we get so caught up in it and we're so used to it for saying it for so long. It's just trying to break that cycle and to have these new behaviors. So see, when you spoke about gratitude there, about practicing gratitude and having tools that can distract you, you know is that so that you can you know regain your energy, your focus, or have a and just change your way of thinking?
It's to elevate your sensations. So gratitude releases dopamine and serotonin in the body. And so when you can really slow down and appreciate, the word appreciation means to increase the value of something. So you take your current situation and you appreciate it. So you take it what it is and you add value to it, right? Not from a toxic positivity, pretending like your life isn't challenging, is simply acknowledging the positive or the good that's in your world. And it's the foundation of all abundance. I think it was Eckhart Tolle that said that too. It's the foundation of all
Yep.
abundance. So what gratitude does in the journeys, if you look at the first 6 journeys, they're all about that breaking through the earth. So if it were the analogy, we call them the root journeys, because they're internal, they're behind the scenes, they're in the shadows, they're in the dirt, and they're things that you have to do in order to elevate and break through the earth so that you can grow into the tree that you're capable of, right?
Yeah.
So these first 6 journeys are all about breaking through the surface, right? And so if you look at the first journey of non-consciousness, it's recognizing that we all have patterns and automations. The second journey of awareness is waking up to that compassionately and gently. The third journey is about feeling the sensations in your body. And you look at accelerated resolution therapy, it's about feeling the sensations, not naming the emotions. It's feeling and naming the sensations in the body. Then you go into acceptance, which is acknowledging what is, allowing it to be there. And then you go to the journey of gratitude, which is an empowering tool that elevates your chemical sense in the body. And then you go to the journey of empowerment, which is the 6th journey in the root journeys. And that's about anchoring in and giving yourself a stop, right? So that you don't slide backwards. It's essentially putting in place tools and resources and people to help you anchor in that higher way of being so that you don't slide back into your old patterns. And
That's a
so all of these are meant to break through the ground. You look at gratitude as an elevating emotion. It takes you out of depression, anxiety, and it moves you up into the dopamine and the serotonin in the body, which are higher level emotions, chemical responses, right?
Yep, that's amazing there. Because when I was reading through your stuff, when I seen the 6th route, I didn't fully understand it. Now I understand
Yeah.
it. Now I understand, we have described it there. Because gratitude for me is something that I've practiced for the last 4 or 5 years, and it has dramatically increased my life. But not just my life on there, but I'm talking about internally. Like, I'll give you an example. The other day, my son, he was going out to play, and he asked me to watch him go and chap the next door neighbours. So he ran across, chapped the door. They weren't in, and he came back, and then he said, "Daddy, I'm going to go to the park." So he came and gave me a hug, and he says, "I love you, Dad." And then he went away a little bit, and he turned round, and he blew me a kiss, and then he ran a little bit. He turned round again and blew me a kiss, and he done that until he went round the corner. And after that, I just was, and I walked in, and I had a tear in my eye, and I was like, I am such a lucky man. I am so
Huh.
lucky. And I just felt this, emotion that when I was drinking and taking drugs, I don't think I could have ever have really grasped how, what that felt like. And, and I think with people in general, not everyone, they get caught so much up in life and what's life's doing that they very rarely stop to look at what we do have, just the little things that can
Yeah.
totally transform your day.
Well, I tell my clients, we're going to be in the roots for a bit. There's no sense in us growing a tree if your roots are bad, right? If we're working up on, people love to work on the surface stuff, the fun stuff, the visioning, the dreaming, the abundance, all of that. But they don't like to work in the shadows. And what I've heard most in my programs, like our SG programs, is that people go through these first 6 journeys and they're like, what the hell is this? This is hard. What are you doing to me? I've had people tell me to F off in those first 6 journeys because it's hard. You're really facing the shadows. And Carl Jung, in his work, he talks about the importance of doing that shadow work, because until you face the shadows, they will always rule your life, and you'll call it fate, right? Until you face them. And so we like to hang out in those root journeys until you elevate yourself enough that now we can explore uncertainty and abundance and surrender and vision and nurture, right?
Yeah.
But if you go and you envision the future and you're in a disempowered state, you're going to see negativity and a repeat of your past, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Self-sabotage. But if you come at it from an empowered state, you'll see possibility, abundance, you'll see opportunities, you'll see ways that you never saw before. And so it's important that we slow down and we get back to the roots. If you're disempowered in any way, what the hell are you doing in the growth journeys, right?
Yeah.
Come back to your roots and let's build those up.
So when do you start to see the change when you're working with clients when it comes, do you see like a slow, gradual change, or do they get like aha moments when they get to a certain part of the program?
I've had some clients change in a single session. We've never had to meet again.
Oh, wow.
Ever, right? I've had some clients that reach their change going through the program 3 times. I've had clients go through multiple times, right? And then they finally get this aha, like, oh my gosh. I have one client, and she's working with us now. But her vision and goal was to climb the Grand Canyon, to hike the Grand Canyon. Not a big deal for most people. Her challenge is that she had 5 feet of colon removed. It's an impossible task. She couldn't do it. And through our program, she decided there's nothing off the table for me. And realized her power. She hiked the Grand Canyon, which is an impossibility for her. She realized her power from it. I have another client that she came through our program on scholarship. Okay. We had a scholarship for her. She was living in her car. She was homeless.
Oh.
She went from living in her car to envisioning living in a beachfront property a mile from the beach, and that she could easily afford it. She went from that car to living in a Motel 6. She went from that Motel 6 to living with a roommate. She went from that roommate to living in her own apartment a mile from the beach. And today she's got a job that secured that in, so it will never go away. Not only can she afford it, she can afford to keep it forever, right? She went from living in her car and homeless to living in her dream.
Yeah, that's, and when you see these kind of things, that must fill you with, gratitude for one, but you must look at that and think, I'm getting to witness this. I'm getting to witness these changes.
I didn't do the work, but I'm doing my own work too, but they did the work. They're the ones that did the hard part. They're the ones that had to navigate back through those emotions. All I did was give them a framework that allowed them to do that. And it's the framework I use on myself. It's the framework I've learned from all the people we've interviewed. We've interviewed 240 experts so far on our podcast. I've had coaches that are some of the top coaches in the world. I've done my degree. I had a master's in industrial psychology, and I'm looking at what isn't just theory and philosophy, what actually works when it comes to healing the mind, right? And really getting ourselves where we need to be. And there is no like one and done solution. This is a repeated process, mountains without tops, an ability to grow to a certain level and find out we want to keep growing. It's an ability to become a giant, find out we're small in some other area and we want to grow that too. And so we start looking for our small parts and we start developing those. I look at some of these leaders in the world and they're phenomenal in one area, but they're falling apart at home. Their marriage is falling apart. They're overweight. They're unhealthy. They're depressed. They're lonely at the top. And it's like, great, you're a giant in one area, but what about all the areas that really matter, right? How's that going?
Yeah, what's your view on that, and in terms of the different areas of life? Because if you're looking to live a fulfilled life, that means that, in my idea, that you'd be fulfilled. You'd be, fitness, your family, your relationships, financially, and you have a sense of fulfillment. What does your program cover that as well? Does it look at the different domains and it's like the table leg. If there's one leg off, the table will feel unbalanced.
The framework, the 12 journeys framework, applies to every area of your life. So you'll not only use it in your finances, you'll use it with your health and wellness. You'll use it in relationships. Because if you think about it, I'm going to go through all 12 real quick. Okay. So you have non-consciousness, first 6 journeys, right? Non-consciousness, awareness. So what's automated? What can I become aware of? What sensations are present? How can I acknowledge and accept where I am? How can I appreciate what is? And then how can I empower myself to anchor in at a higher level, right? Then you go into the growth journeys of uncertainty. We all think we know what's going to happen out here, but we don't. We make it up, we create it. And so uncertainty is recognizing that there's possibility out there for me. Abundance, the journey of abundance, is recognizing that all the materials, resources, opportunities, people that I need to create anything I can imagine are already here. It's up to me to transform them from what they are into what I have in mind. Then vision is what allows me to do that. So the journey of vision is visioning beyond what is into what I would like to create as a creation. And then surrender is, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And so I'm willing to let go of the pathway and follow what needs to happen for that to become a reality, just like Edison's 10,000 ways that didn't work. And then the journey of nurture is about, I'm going to do my self-care and nurture myself and grow myself in such a way that I can create this vision I've imagined. And the final journey, the 12th journey, is the legacy journey, which is the whole reason for everything. Why am I even doing this? What's the meaning I want to give to life? What are my purposes that are infinite? Purpose means a resting place. If you look up the etymology of that word, it means a rest stop, essentially. You're going to have myriad purposes, pit stops along the way, places you'd like to visit, right, in your bigger journey. So purpose is nothing more than rest stops, viewpoints along the way, interest points, right?
Yeah, and I think our purpose changes over times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
say that again.
I said I think our purpose evolves over time. We have purpose that it's never ending. That's what I mean.
And that's where this framework applies to any area. And you'll do it again and again and again and again. We named our company Mandelbrot after the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot, who created an equation that when added into itself, the outcome, it goes back into the equation, gets added, and then creates a new outcome, and it gets added in. It's these small and simple steps repeated create the complexity of life. It's a fractal is what they call it. And so where we are today is a fractal of where we'll be tomorrow. Where we are today is a fractal of what was yesterday, right? It's an expanded version or a growing version of what's possible, and there is no limitation. If you looked at fractal math, you could see that the universe is unlimited. The only limitations that come in, and this is from Townsend Wardlaw, he says, the moment you believe a belief, it becomes limiting by the nature of believing it. You just boxed in the universe and said, that's it.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
so
So,
there is no limitation.
so how do you deal with the unknown then? How do you deal with it?
Ooh,
When
yeah,
you've obviously had to come
just
up with it so many times over the past, 15 years.
there's a lot of resistance to not knowing, even in me, right? And so what I've learned to do and what I'm learning to do with the unknown is to embrace it as possibility. Margaret Drabble says that when nothing is sure, everything is possible. What I do is I remind myself that the future hasn't been written yet. It doesn't exist until I create it, till I speak it, till I step into it. It does not exist. So my past has no say in who I'll be today or tomorrow. So I get a chance to stop with the unknown and see what I would like to create into it because
Yeah.
it doesn't exist, right? And so when I can see that, I know I could trust me in the unknown. So what do? I build me. When I'm facing the unknown, I'm facing the uncertainty, I slow down, I work on this guy. Where am I feeling insecurity? Where am I feeling uncertain about my ability to create into that? That's what I slow down with.
It all comes back down to awareness again. Awareness is just constant. You have to have it all. So when you're looking at
Constant.
when you're going back into you and creating a vision, how do you develop a clear vision?
Yeah.
And how do you declare it? Because
Yeah.
Conor McGregor says, if you can see it here and you can feel it, you speak it, it will happen.
Yeah. So Einstein said that time is relative,
Yeah.
which means that the only people that measure time are people. That the universe doesn't care about time. It will go in any direction to create anything in the present moment. So when I create a vision, there's a scripture called Habakkuk 2:2. It says, write the vision clearly so that it can be delivered, so it's not delayed, right? Something along those lines. But the vision needs to be written so clearly. Catherine Lee, who was on our show, wrote a vision so clear. She was on Oprah 3 times, and she envisioned herself sitting with Oprah so clearly that she had a memory of things yet to be. She had a pre-membering of this vision. So I created an application on AI that allows me to clarify my vision. It asks me a bunch of questions, and then it pops out in present tense a clear vision that I can
Wow.
copy and paste into my journal. And then I keep what's called a 5,000 things journal that I write down my visions. And my goal is to write 5,000 of them, just like the book Happy Pocket Full of Money. And I can't keep up to it. Every time I write one, it gets fulfilled. And it's not playing the lottery. It's that when you write your visions clearly, hope theory says that when you have a clear vision, you create hope for a brighter future. You know you're the one that's going to create it, and you'll overcome any obstacle to make it a reality. So if your vision isn't clear, you're not going to have hope for it. And therefore, you're not going to act on it. And therefore, you're not going to overcome obstacles. So you only want to write your vision in present tense. No saying I will be this or I would like to be that, because then you just keep pushing it out into some future that doesn't even exist anyway. You don't say I would or I was that, because that's past tense. You say it just like you and I are sitting here. I am on this show talking to Lachlan, right? He's got his microphone right in front of his face. His earphones are on. I can see the brick walls right behind him. In my room, it's a little bit crisp. The air is clean. The lights are shining in my face. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling the emotion of being on this podcast. That's how you speak your vision.
So is it tapping into
Like
the
as though
emotion
it's
of?
happening right now.
So it's like tapping into that emotion
Yeah.
of having it already. That end result of what would it feel like to be standing on stage? Because my vision is to speaking on the biggest stages in the world. So it'd be, what would it feel like to be there, standing on that stage with my wife and children beside me, looking in at the audience? How would it feel? Is that
Yeah, think about our vision boards. Is like we write our vision boards and we get a picture, and the picture is from the outside looking in, not from our perspective looking out. Like one example is, let's say you want a yacht. So most people get a picture of a yacht and they are on some dock looking at some yacht out there, not a picture from the yacht looking out from the yacht, right? Not a picture of you looking out from the stage at the audience, right? Not what would it feel like? What does it feel like?
Wow,
to
that's
feel this
golden.
vision right now,
That is,
right?
I've never heard that before. Like, that is amazing, because you're so right. When I look at my vision, I'm looking at me standing on the stage. I'm not looking at myself, looking into the audience, looking at my wife. And
Yeah.
it's there's such a common, like, that's what I've always done. I've always done it looking at me, never from me being in that moment with it happening, you
What
know?
does it look like through your eyes to look out at the audience? What does that feel like? Not what would it feel like? That's another distinction. Not what would it feel like? What will it feel like? What does it feel like to be here staring at this audience right now? Right?
Wow. That's that is gold. That is a nugget, definitely, for me. And what about obstacles? Do you, you know, do you perceive them obstacles that are going to come, so that you're aware of them coming, so you can overcome them? Do you visualize that intensely? Like, this might happen, that might happen. This is how I'm going to overcome it.
Sometimes our obstacles are self-generated by who we think we are. And sometimes there are challenges to creating the thing because it's never been created before.
Right.
But if you
Yep.
think about the materials of the world, is, abundance is not something you acquire, like Wayne Dyer says, it's something you tune into. And so when you recognize the world is stocked full of everything you need to create anything you can imagine, then it's up to you to transform it from what it is into what you have in mind. Everything around you was done that way. The first law of thermodynamics says that energy isn't created or destroyed, it is only transformed,
Yeah.
right? So number one is recognize that everything you need is already here. Number two is recognize that you're the one that's going to transform it. Number three is create a clear vision of what you'd like to create with what is. Number four is surrender how you're going to do it. Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that looking backward. So
Yeah.
you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect. Edison found 10,000 ways that didn't work to find the one way that did. He was willing to pursue every pathway and flow with it to create that light bulb,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And so that I will. What about failure? This just popped into my head, because so many people, they're scared of failing. They're scared of attempting something and failing. And I used
Mm,
to be like that, but now I have a different view, that it's just a learning lesson. And I think it was one of your blogs or something that you wrote about 10,000 lessons. You said Edison just had 10,000 lessons.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
Is
in failure and success, the definition of the words: failure is defined as a negative yield from your efforts. Success is defined as a positive yield from your efforts. So if you're looking at negative yields versus positive yields, success and failure are simply the yields of your efforts. If your efforts are consistently yielding the negative, why are you doing it?
yeah.
Find something that will shift you over to a positive yield. That's what Edison did. He didn't say, "Oh, I found 10,000 ways it didn't work. There's no way this is going to happen." He kept using one as a leverage to find another and another and another and another. And he was willing to pursue and turn over every stone to find the positive yield. And he found it, right? So failure isn't failure the way we define it. Failure is simply a negative result. That's it, right?
That is it. And I think a lot of people do get attached to the failure, but the way you're explaining it, it makes a lot more sense. And this is why I know you talk about it a lot, about the importance of mentorship and getting somebody to help
Yeah.
you along the way, because as we don't see our own blind spots. I know that I don't.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have coaches, I wouldn't have seen a lot of my behaviors, my attitudes, certain things that they could identify, because they've been there, but they can see it, because they know what they're looking for. And I know you speak about how important your mentors have been for you, and your kind of transformation. What's your kind of view on that?
I think mentors are vital. And the beauty of a mentor is they don't feel your emotions.
Yeah.
They are unattached to your emotions. So whatever you're feeling inside of you, they don't have that. So they get to take this objective view, non-emotionally, and really look at your life with you and explore it with you from a space of non-emotion. Whereas we don't get that for ourselves. We get so hooked up on our emotions, we get spun off on different pathways. Plus, mentors have figured it out. So if they've already carved a path that works, we can shortcut our process of learning by following the pathways that they've set for us. There's a story in my book, The Art of Accomplishment. It talks about the man that wanted to solve the Rubik's Cube on his own, no help, no outside sources. It took him 26 years in a time of YouTube, in a time of self-help videos. It took him 26 years. He burned up all of his resources. He lost his marriage, all to figure out this Rubik's Cube. That the fastest time now is like 3 seconds, something like that.
Yeah.
It took him 26 years to solve it in a time when there were people that could teach him to do it in less, right?
So
Why would you do that?
It's insane. What are the biggest hurdles when you're talking to people, and I know what it's like being a coach. You know that you can help them, and you're not actually trying to sell them anything. You're trying to actually serve them. But there's so much resistance to hiring a coach. What do you think the biggest issue there is, when it comes to people with the resistance to getting help?
Okay, so I'll give an example. I got invited to become a part of a coaching program. It was a $10,000 investment. I didn't have $10,000, not even close, right? And I said yes. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And it was a short window. It was like a 2-month window. And I went to work creating my seat. I wanted to be a part of this program. I was willing to sell my motorcycle. I was doing everything I could think of. And it looked like it wasn't going to happen. And I outreached for new clients, all these things, and nothing was working. I made a commitment that was so much bigger than me. I said yes to something that was so much bigger than me. I didn't know how I would do it. And about a week before the event, I was resigned to this probably isn't going to happen, right? And a man reached out and asked me if I'd coach him for a year and signed a contract for $10,000. And I took that, paid for my seat, went through one of the most profound programs I've ever been through. And, all from a creation. And I think where we get hung up is we think, I don't know how, so therefore I'm limited because I can't see the pathway for creating this. And we won't even take a step into creating it.
Yeah. And
we make commitments that are safe, right?
Yeah, I've been in that position, many a time, and I've been scared to take that kind of step. But do you see, when you took that commitment and when you initially took it, did you feel and believe that you were going to get the money, or did you just desire it?
I was scared. I was scared to death, right? I was like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah, but you were committed, right?
Yeah, so commitment is different from emotions. So, one of my mentors, Philip Weech, he said, be your word more than your feelings.
Be your word more than your feelings.
If you look at the definition of commitment, Steve Chandler, who's another great mentor of mine, Steve Chandler said, what you do is what you're committed to. It's what the word means. People are in jail because they committed a crime, right? They did it. That's why they're in jail. It's something you do. So if you're not doing it, it's pretty simple. You're not committed to it. So what you do is what you're committed to. So when you say you'll do something, integrity is the delta or the difference between what you say you'll do and what you actually do. You want to see somebody's commitment, their integrity, see how their word shows up in the world. And so I made a commitment to be that. I could have easily said, I don't want to do that, and had zero commitment to that, right? I made an agreement that I would do that. My commitment was the follow through. So I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I was scared, and I was uncertain, and I was all these things, but I was committed more than my feelings. So I did everything I could think of to create it, right?
And you did create
So
it.
integrity is showing up and being your word, even when you're not feeling like being your word, right? Or changing the agreement. If you can't do that agreement, change the agreement.
How important is to let go of the need to know the answers on how it's going to happen?
Ooh, that's a hard one, right? I don't think it cares whether you think you need to know the answers or not. The way this universe is designed, I think it's up to you to decide whether you're going to act on it anyway, right? With or without the answers. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the mathematician, said that, we need to hold as our discipline uncertainty as empirical decision makers. The ability to move forward with incomplete information is the highest and most noble human pursuit. So we need to be willing to move forward with incomplete information. We need to be willing to step into the unknown. Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yeah.
And most of us want to know what's going to happen next, so we won't imagine because we need to know. We hold knowing as more important than imagining. And
Yeah.
that's where I think we're losing.
That's what I was meaning, but I kind of maybe worded it wrong. It was exactly what you're saying there, is that it's because I think people don't take the chances, or don't take these because they don't know. They don't know how they're going to get it. So that stops them from, just kind of letting go and committing. So
Yeah.
and that's what I meant. I maybe worded it wrong, but it was like, because I know when I've committed to things and I didn't know, but it's came off. And it was a similar thing to what you said about a coaching program. And mine was a coaching program, and it was roughly the same amount of money. And I committed to it, and I didn't know how I was going to get it, but I tried everything, the same kind of thing. And then I got a, a payment into my bank from something that I'd applied for a month prior, which was rejected. And then I couldn't believe that it happened. But, and this was just where this whole journey that I've been on, there's been so many things that the good things that have happened is I didn't know how they were going to happen. And they happened. And it was, and this is why I try to get my head around it. It's about, the universe is so complex, but are we on this path, on a, is everything happening in a grand design, or do we create it by our intentions and our commitment?
I like to believe that we get to create it, right? And I think too many of us are playing the lottery with our lives. We are out there taking action, being busy, but essentially it's like buying scratch off tickets. We're just hoping for the best. We're wishing to be rescued. We're wanting things to come in, that are unimaginable. And when they do, we plan our lives from that point, as though we won the lottery. But there are things that are proven right now that we could be acting on that have a high likelihood of producing the results that we're looking for. And we're unwilling to do that. We'd rather do the high activity, low return items because they're easier. Let's face it. It's easier to write a social media post than it is to reach out to a client and ask them to sit with you in conversation. It's easier to write an indirect blog post or start a Facebook group or do a podcast. I have a podcast and I did it for years and I didn't create one client from it, right? I have a community of 4,200 members globally, and not, a couple of clients have come through it, but it's all free work. It's like playing the lottery. Now I'm having to be strategic about where I generate my clients from. I work with teams. I work with businesses and organizations. I work with CEOs because, one, they can afford to pay for my services, which allows me to do more of the stuff too, to give back to the community. But really, we kind of spin our wheels and present our products to people who can really, they may never afford it, or they may never want to push themselves to afford it. And I think it's important to slow down and be strategic with our time. And you could still give back to the world in ways. But sometimes when we shoestring these, we're paying out of our own pocket, and we're dying on the vine in the name of serving others, but we're not serving others because we throw ourselves into a survival state and we're unable to show up powerfully because of where we're spending our efforts. We're playing the lottery. You know what I mean? We're hoping we get lucky.
I know exactly what you mean. You just kind of highlighted my life over the past several years, because that's exactly, what you said there was pretty much what I've done. Facebook groups, this, that, and the next thing, and there was no strategy. And this podcast for me, this is something that has been a dream of mine, and I've took action on this. This wasn't for clients or for anything. This was to prove to myself that I have the ability, and it was just because I had those limiting beliefs of not being good enough, and I had to move through that. This was more of a kind of line in the sand for me, and just said, you know what, this is, I've wanted to do this, and I'm not allowing these beliefs to hold me back anymore. And in a sense, it was a surrender to what I felt was calling me. Okay, and it was uncertainty. It's like what you talk about is surrender and nurture, you know. And why is it so important to embrace the uncertainty of the path forward, and just to trust that,
Yeah.
if you're that's your intentions, and it will unfold as you take the action.
Well, and here's something beautiful about creation is that there really is no limit to your ability to be coached. I've been coached by 240 masters in the past 4 years on my podcast without payment. They came on my show as guests and they shared their wisdom, and I got to learn from them. I can go to YouTube and watch any video I want on any topic for free. I can go grab a book for $20 and get coached by that book. I have a library in Audible of over 400 titles, right? Because I can go grab a $20 book or a $10 book here and there, right? And get coached by it. I can go to an online program for 100 to 500 bucks and get myself coached there. So there is no limitation on your level. It's all depending on what you want to invest in. A lot of us won't even put in the time to invest in ourselves. And not money, I'm talking time. We won't invest our time in it. So, we do have a lot of free programs. We have our Wake Up with Giants TV every Sunday morning. We have a global community. We have free events that we do. We have a $20 book that people can buy. Like, these are all ways that people can get coaching. Even if they can't afford our higher level programs, they still have access to the programs. They're just not willing to invest their time. I give things away and they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why are we doing that? Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. If you're going to take something from me or grab one of my programs for free, use it. Like, go through it. I mean, I have a program that's a 12-week online program that's a self-study with daily emails, 12 meditations, 200 pieces of curated content. I've given it away for free. And I go through and look at the track record of who's using it, maybe 1%, you know? So I
Uh,
would challenge people to show up,
yeah, and I think you're not alone when it comes to doing what you're, because I can see myself giving a lot of stuff, and it can be quite, because you've probably put so much effort and time and energy into creating this, and your intention is to try and help people change their life, because the impact it's had on your life from
Yep.
2009 till now. And I watched a lot of the content you put out, and it's great, the videos on YouTube with Big Giant TV, and you're spending a lot of time investing, and you're giving your time, your energy, your content, you're putting it out. But how does, when you are, putting all this content out, and you're trying to educate people, that must have, you know, a bit of a kind of energy drain for you, because if you're giving stuff away for free and they're not receiving it, or they're not doing it, does that kind of piss you off?
It doesn't piss me off. It saddens me a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like I have mentors who reach out who have helped me when I'm struggling, and I take I strive to take. I don't do it every time, but I strive to take what they've given me and implement it, plug it in, use it, do it, right? Start showing up with it. And so just to see that it has nothing to do with me. It's not a fence over here. It's like that's how you show up everywhere. Like, if we're honest about it, this has nothing to do with me or my programs. It's how you show up in your life, and it's a demonstration. When you can wake up to that, we can do something about it. But I think it saddens me because here they are wanting this, but then not putting the effort into even themselves to use it. And it's all right there, like everything that I would teach you right here, all right there, and they don't put the energy into it for themselves. So it's not about the programs; it's about them. Like, what's going on in your world that's having you show up so minimally in your life for you, and not as a shame point or guilt, but just as an awakening. Like, come on, wake up. Let's get going here. Let's create.
Yeah, and I would look, because I look at in my close, even my family, and my wife is an amazing woman, an amazing mother, and but we're very different in how we conduct our life, and no matter what
Yeah.
I will try and say, she's has her own path to live, but I do struggle sometimes because I'm trying to teach her some of the stuff that I've learned, but she's just not ready to receive it right now, and I have to be
Yeah.
okay with that. And I think because I've seen such a because my journey, I was an alcoholic and drug addict up until 6 years ago, and in the 6 years, I've totally changed my whole life and everything. I'm like a totally different person. But just because I've done that, at the beginning, I was trying to help other people do that. I was trying to kind of, change the world. And I quickly realized that a lot of the time it was a waste of my energy. And it's not that they didn't appreciate it, they just weren't ready to receive it, and they weren't in a position where they could
Yeah.
apply it in their lives. And that's why I had to step back, and just when people come to me, then I'm gladly there to help, but I'm not going out anymore to try and, be a savior, because people have got their
Yeah.
own
And
lessons
I
to
think
learn.
I I love giving back. I would give, and I have to be smart about this. I've got a family I've got to provide for. I've got my own needs I've got to meet as well. And so I've got to balance those two worlds between, giving and also receiving. And part of giving is receiving, but it's really being strategic with your time. As some of us would give our entire life away, and I grew up, my mom would give, to our detriment. And so I know I've adopted some of that, but there has to be a point where you've got to be strategic around your life too. Like a balancing of your world, a balancing of giving to others and taking care of your own needs. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we all have basic needs that have to be met.
Yeah.
And so we've really got to weigh that. Like you can't give from an empty cup. And so it's important for us to fill our cups and find ways to do that. And sometimes giving does that, fills my cup to give. It's just like, oh, it feels amazing, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
So
I totally agree with you there. Let's talk about legacy, because you're on a journey right now, and
yeah.
you know, uh, how do you see this unfolding? Because you obviously visualize and you're looking at this. I know that your book, I was watching it, you're trying to get it to be a movie. And,
Yeah.
how do you see this legacy unfolding for you?
So my image is from the stage, right? Speaking from the stage to large audiences. I'm not in the audience. I'm up on the stage. Uh, the other is the movie is being in the theater actually with families as they come in to watch this movie, and they sit there and they see this movie and they walk out of the theater and their kids say to their parents, I want to be a giant, or I am a giant, right? And they see that for themselves. The book, the same way. This book is a kid's book written for adults. It's a metaphor that will carry through your whole life. So seeing this book in hundreds and thousands of homes, around the world, our goal is 100 million people impacted by the Giants message. That's lofty. I mean, 8 billion people in the world, that's a 0.02% of the population, something like that, which seems ridiculous, but 100 million people is a lot of people,
It is,
right?
yeah.
But
And
they're impacted in some form by the Giants message, whether that's through the books or music or through movies or through the stage or through our programs, our podcasts. Like we're looking at all the ways that we can impact lives. And so that in itself is one of the ways that we want to impact the world is the movie, the book, the programs that we offer. And we've tried to make those available and accessible at all levels, whether you don't have any money at all the way up to organizations that can afford to pay, fees for us to come in and train their teams.
yeah, because you've got
So,
the 12 Journey program, and that's
yeah,
basically a leadership stroke personal mastery,
yeah,
program. And, if you want to talk a little bit about that, because that caters to the individual, but also you can go into businesses and companies and help them, kind of restructure, or help them just kind of
yeah.
master their staff.
So three primary areas. We work with CEOs who are lonely at the top, who are giants in the boardroom and small in the other areas of life that money can't buy. And then we work with teams where they're struggling with change management, employee engagement. They're losing unity. People are quiet quitting. And so we work with teams to help each team member to recognize their giant potential and to take ownership of it and to create cultures of giants within organizations. And so that they're able to work together as a team from the view of becoming giants. We also run our individual group programs. They're called SG programs or Sum Gigante, which means I am giant. And those are 8-week programs where individuals can come and join a group of up to 12 people, no more, so we can keep the intimacy of the group. And for 8 weeks, they journey through the 12 journeys together. They learn them as a framework and they start to establish those as an automation. And then outside of that, we have other simple programs that are self-studies, and we'll talk about those later. But 12 Journeys coaching is really designed for everybody to really engage with their ownership of their life and start to create it from the inside out, like the acorn to the oak tree.
Yeah.
It's to express what their potential is and recognize that it's there, and we help them to do that.
Yeah. And you've also created the giant mindset. Is that what you call it? The giant mindset, which is basically it's kind of adopting a different way of being. Is that,
Yeah.
so you want to talk a little bit about that? Because, I looked at it, I was like, you know what, this is pretty cool. This is
Well, and
something.
it's the giant. The reason I chose the word giant is because it's neutral. It applies to all genders, races, cultures, religions, political views. It doesn't matter. We try and keep our community fairly neutral because we have people from all backgrounds coming through. But it's these principles of being a giant is recognizing that we are all born with potential and power. And then it's up to us to transform that individually, and collectively that will create change as we do that individually. But the giant mindset is really just recognizing that you have this power. You start to speak differently. We've had people say it's like you're speaking another language, right? And so the giant mindset is really taking on this persona of being the giant, not just becoming the giant or imagining yourself as a giant. It's being the giant and unbecoming anything that makes you small. And the way we do that is that we know that giants still take small steps. They're just bigger. So we help people see the small steps they can take in their lives to grow. And as they reach one level, they grow to another and they grow to another. So it's mountains without tops. There is no limit to how big you can become.
Yeah. And, because you talk a lot about the abundance in it and having an abundant mindset,
Yeah.
how would you define abundance, both in your personal and your and professional? What would you say abundance is?
Well, and we have a whole journey on abundance, but abundance, like I said, with Wayne Dyer, isn't something you tune into or acquire. It's something you tune into. It's the default nature of the universe. It means that everything that we would ever need to create anything we can imagine is already here. And it's up to us to imagine it and transform it from what it is to what we have in mind. Richard Paul Evans calls chaos the mine of creation. And abundance is simply the chaos. If you look around your room, even the microphone you're speaking into at one point was chaos. Somebody had an imagining, a vision, took what was, transformed it into what you have today, and here we get to see the result of it, right? Elon Musk didn't have to create Mars to go fly to it. It's already there, right? He didn't even have to create the materials for the rocket ships. They were already there, and he had to transform them to make the materials to make the materials. So it was all transformation. And so abundance is recognizing that we are swimming only always in abundance. Money, oxygen, resources, materials, opportunities, people, they're already here. And gratitude is the first step is in acknowledging that abundance, right?
Yeah. And it must be, it's hard for if people are living paycheck to paycheck to say, well, I
Yeah.
can't see the abundance. And I know I've got ways that I would say it, for example, just, we've got stuff here that the most powerful man in the world 50 years ago couldn't have.
Yeah.
How would you, if somebody's, they're stuck and they've got hardly any money and they're living paycheck to paycheck, what would you say
Yeah.
to them? Obviously gratitude, how would you talk to them and say, come on, this is how? you look at it?
Well, let's say, we had a guest on our show on Sunday. He was working a machine, and it pulled his hand into the machine and ripped off 3 of his fingers. So he's an amputee, right? You think he was worried about what's going to happen in his future? You think he's trying to dream and imagine what's next and how good his life is going to be? Or was he trying to survive the situation and get through it?
Yeah. Definitely surviving that situation.
So when you're in a state of survival, survive it. When you're in a state of survival, get yourself into a position of being out of survival. Do whatever you need to do to get yourself into a state where you can start imagining into the future, right? But you have to take care of the essentials. Maslow talks about it. Others talk about these essential needs that we have as human beings: shelter, food, clothing. So if somebody's living paycheck to paycheck, or they're struggling and you're not making ends meet, start looking at ways to make those ends meet. Start looking at possibilities for you to maybe, do a side job. If you're building a dream like me, I've worked the entire time that I've built my dream. I've had another job while I built my dream. I've done coaching and other things as well. But I've always made sure that my basic needs are met first, right? And then from those primary needs, it takes some of that pressure off so that I can look and do other things outside of that to grow and expand.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. Now, obviously, how old are your children?
My oldest is 21, and I've got an 11-year-old at home. So I've got 4 kids. They run the gambit there.
So how has that, fatherhood relationship evolved over the past, 11, 12 years, 13 years when you've changed? How has that changed?
Well, and even through the divorce, coming out of the divorce was when there was the biggest impact, because it affected them too. And they didn't want to be around me. And I'd read an article on putting a marble in the jar. And so I made a commitment. And this is something I chose to do. I read this article. It said, put a metaphorical marble in their jar, fill their jar. And so I would reach out to my kids and I would tell them I love them. I would do something for them. I would let them know that I'm there and not put my stuff on them. I would put a marble in their jar every day. And even with my ex-wife, that's, the relationship had changed. I made sure that I didn't cause additional harm over there. And when the divorce was finalized, so we separated in April of 2019 and then got divorced in October. And in between April and October, I made it a point to just put the marble in the jar, right? And on the day of the divorce, I was broken down. I was beat. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I went down to Utah County here in Salt Lake, and there's a huge lake. On the other side of it is just empty fields. And I drove out there and just cried, sobbed, walking down this dirt road. And I looked down, and there's a marble out in the middle of nowhere on the ground, right?
That's the universe.
And it was just a reminder, just like you did what you should have done. Keep doing it. And today I have a great relationship with my kids. I've taught them the giant principles. A prophet's not a prophet in their own land, but I do see that come out with my kids. I see them take on some of these principles, and they're all doing good things, but they're so close to home. They see dad 100%. Dad is dad. Dad's not an author and all that stuff. And so, but I strive to even honor that in them. I teach them what I can teach them, and sometimes they allow me to do that. And a lot of times they just want me to be dad, right?
Yeah,
and so
it's hard to because I've got just 2 young kids, and that's the same. I try to teach them stuff, but they're young and they just don't want to listen to it. They're like, nah, just come on, let's go and jump on the trampoline. And
right.
So
and those are the marble in the jar moments.
Well,
right?
I think because when I was younger, when my kids were younger, I wasn't the best father. I was drinking all the time, and even when I wasn't, I've been an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic for a long time, but I was hiding it for many years. But even when they didn't know, or my wife wasn't fully aware, I still wasn't present. I might have been there physically, but I wasn't there emotionally. And just having that opportunity now to be there all the time for them, and just simple days and simple moments, I would never change it. I don't care how much money I was offered to go and do my old job. I wouldn't change what I have, because I get to witness them in their good days, their bad days, the indifferent days.
Yeah.
And I took that for granted for a long time. And now I know I'm a present, caring, loving father. And I think that's one of the most proudest things that I can say. And regardless of everything else, I know that in my heart, and they know that I'm there, which I think is very important. You know,
Yeah.
it's for
Yeah.
them
There are
especially.
things money can't buy certain things. And at the end of life, people talk about the things that mattered most. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with work or career or job or anything else. It has to do with their relationships and their community and giving back, And so, um, there, like we mentioned earlier, there is a balancing of giving back. You've got to make sure that your own needs are met too. And so that, as humans, we don't really get a free ride here.
Always.
We got to do our part, and that makes it challenging. And we all have our version of that. And so even, writing a book or coaching or consulting businesses, it's like, that's a job. It's just a different version of a job. Actors, actresses, they're just doing a job. It's just their version of it, right?
Yeah.
They happen to have gotten famous from it or whatever. But
So
yeah,
how important is having fun for you? You know, how do you prioritize just checking out and having a bit of fun?
I have to schedule it in. Yeah, for me, it's like I get so focused on stuff. Like I've got to schedule it in. Otherwise, I forget to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's vital. You've got to take those breaks and really just play. I think it's vital. Plug it in.
Yeah, that's why, because I use the gym. I'm in the gym every morning, and I don't
Yeah,
have rest days. And people are like, you're going to overtrain. I'm like, I'm not in there to build muscles. I'm in there to have clarity in my mind. I says, I'm not in
yeah,
there smashing big, massive weights every day. You know, some days I'll go in and
right.
do something very light, but it's my time, which I love. I go first thing in the morning and I clear my mind, and it's fun to
Yeah,
me. I enjoy it. Well, some people might
yeah.
not, but I think I agree. And it was actually it's a podcast guest I've got coming on next week, and he posted a while back, and he's like, "What do you do for fun?" And I had
Mm,
to think about it because, like you, I'm very focused, and a lot of the time it's work, work, work. And when I'm not working, it's with two young kids. There's so much going on that
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't, I couldn't think of anything. And then I thought, well, the gym for me, I look forward to the gym at night. I get all my stuff ready. So that's my fun. So I do have it.
yeah,
But if I didn't have that, then I would definitely, I think I would struggle with different things, whether it be my head, emotions. You know, the gym helps me clear my mind. And some
yeah,
people it might be video games, or some people it might be, you know, different things. But I think it's important to have that element of fun in your life. And what about
yeah.
structure and routine? How do you view having, you know, a daily routine, non-negotiables, stuff that you consistently do each day?
For me in the morning, my mornings are everything. So in the morning, I wake up, I make my bed first thing. So that's one accomplishment down. And then I'll grab a cup of coffee and I'll sit down and I'll journal. I have the applications now, the AI applications. So I'll talk to those as part of my processing. But I'll create myself first thing in the morning. Who's showing up to do my day? I'll listen to my declaration statements, of who I'm declaring myself to be and anchor those in. I listen to those every morning. And then I'll sit and vision every morning. What am I creating? And the rest of the day, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. I just know I'm creating it. Right.
Yep.
And so there will be a little bit of strategy in there, but sometimes strategy goes out the window the moment we hit the road. And so I stay flexible and adaptable throughout the day. So that's even a commitment, is to stay adaptable to whatever comes up. And so, but I do have a routine and ritual to get up and do those things. Sometimes I'll hit the gym, but it's not consistent. It used to be, but not anymore. Um, for me, most importantly, is to sit with my mind and to process things. And so I do that daily.
Yep. I think they said, was it the quote, master your morning to elevate your life? I think that, I can't remember if
Yeah.
it's master the morning to master your life. but it was just how important having that time to set yourself up. Because I do something very similar to yourself at my values. So I read my
Yeah.
values and who I'm showing up as. And I do a thing called choices where I choose what I'm creating, and then I spend time visualizing it. So we do similar things, and it's just because what I'm trying to spark things, because some things will work for some and they won't work for others. And if
Right.
I can ask as many people what they do and how they structure their day, because some people are very rigid. They'll have a to-do list. They'll have so many things done and they'll do it that way. Some people are adaptable and flexible. Like I'm quite like you. I'm adaptable and flexible, but it's trying to get as much stuff out there so that anyone listening can say, right, oh, I'll give that a try. I'll maybe
Yeah.
try that. And the biggest thing I love asking about is, I know you spoke about meditation, but how highly would you rank meditation and on your list?
Well, I listen to my declarations. On my list, meditation would be down low. Like it's not something I worry about. I'm more mindful.
Yeah.
So I spend time for mindfulness to be aware of things than I do meditating. I have a hard time sitting down for too long and, just checking out to a meditation. Now, if I'm falling asleep at night, they say the power hour is 30 minutes before bed, 30 minutes after you wake up is your power hour, right? Vital times. And so sometimes at night I'll listen to a meditation and fall asleep to it.
Yeah.
But in the mornings, I don't like to spend my time doing meditations. I'd rather be mindful and aware and start creating.
Yeah. Just get up and
Get going. Yep.
just get up and just get at 'em. So, other than that, what is there anything else that you could suggest, and any tips and tricks? Because before we jump into, because I would like you to, you know, just finish up on talking about, your program, what you've got to offer,
Yeah.
how people can reach you, because I'm going to have all the links for
Yeah.
the website, for the book, for your YouTube channel, and everything there in the description, so anyone can click on and reach. But it's just an opportunity for you to talk about anything that we've not discussed, or anything that you would like to kind of speak about you think might be important.
I think for the viewer here is you are doing better than you think. And to give yourself some grace for what you're going through, because it is challenging. What you're doing is challenging. Anytime there's change or transformation, it's challenging. It doesn't have to be hard or painful or suffering, but you're going to overcome some obstacles to get to where you want to be, and it might take some time. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself some grace and space to be exactly where you are. Give yourself grace and space for whatever's happened and who you've been in the past. It's okay. It's not going to ruin anything. And be patient with yourself as you learn how to do this, because it will be a learning process. And I tell my clients, you've got to be willing to suck at something long enough to get good at it. And most people don't want to suck at things. They want to be good right out of the gate. And so I'd invite you to be terrible at it for a while. Be terrible at it long enough to get good at it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would say, just be patient with yourself. Give yourself that grace and space and that love and compassion that you would give to other people. For most people, when they talk to themselves, if that was verbalized to another person, it would be labeled as abuse, right? And so soften that up on yourself. You did what you did. You are where you are. You were who you were. It's okay that it is what it is. It's not a resignation. It's simply where you are on the map. Now, where do we want to go from here?
Yeah. I love that. I love that, because a lot of people quit before the miracle happens. They just
Yeah.
don't see the
Yeah.
results that they want, so they throw the towel in. And you're a prime example.
Yeah.
You wrote the book in 2009 and published it 10 years
Yeah.
later. But you were quite aware
Man.
that you still had to grow. And I think that's why I said at the beginning, I believe life happens for us. So it's not to, like you said, beat yourself up. Just look at, what am I learning? How am I
Yeah.
evolving? And as we spoke about, when you discussed it's the awareness. Just be aware, be mindful of your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and slowly try and adapt and change the ones that are not, they're not aligning with who you want to be.
Yeah. Well, I love your statement. Life happens for us. Let's play with that a little bit. There's some people that say life happens to us, and those that say life happens for us. And where I'd like to come from is life happens from us.
Yeah, I actually like from us
Right?
better. I prefer that.
Yeah. So play with that. Who are you being and how is that creating your world? And that's what the giant gives you, is a framework of being the giant in your world. And sometimes when you feel small, just go back through the journeys to regain your giantness, right? It's okay.
Yep. And that's what the program's all about. You say that you're basically saying that anybody can change, anybody can reach their highest potential, and you've got a program there that is a step-by-step guide to take them through it, and it's reoccurring. You're something that you can take on and constantly throughout the rest, because reinvention, it's an ongoing process. You don't reinvent once, you're constantly reinventing yourself. You're over and
Yeah.
over again. And to have something like the 12 journeys, that would be something that once you've done it once, you can go back and do it over and over again. So I would,
And you can do individual journeys. You don't have to do them in sequence. You don't have to do them linearly. You might do 3 journeys of different areas. It just depends on where you're at. They're all individual journeys that come together in finality with the 12, right?
yeah.
And so they're not steps, they're not pathways or pathways. They're journeys, right? And so you really want to master the journeys.
Yeah. And that's it. It's about being, isn't it? Being, just stepping into who you are being, and truly going for what you want. Dream again. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people
Yeah.
have forgot to, they've stopped dreaming, and I think it's time to start dreaming again. Dream big
Yeah.
and go for it. And with something like the 12 journeys, I'm pretty sure that that's going to help somebody, look at their shadow, overcome what's been holding them back, shine a light on it, look at their beliefs, their thoughts. Because basically, you're basically rewiring or reprogramming the mind. You're helping them remove what's not working and instilling new, empowering, beliefs, actions, behaviors, thoughts. And it's basically a kind of overhaul, identifying what's not working, replace it with something that is working.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Perfect.
And practicing it long enough to automate it. Yep.
Yes. Well, as I said, everyone, the links will all be in the description. And is there any last words from you, Nick?
No, I would invite people to get a copy of the book, but don't just get one copy. Get one for your friends and family and loved ones. Buy it by the case, but go to giantsandsmalls.com also and take our emotional giant quiz. See where you are on your journey, because that'll give you a good start point for doing your work. So you can go through that quiz and it'll give you a sense of where you are currently, and then that gives you a place to work from.
Yep.
And so go do that.
And also, you get to customize the book. I think it's an extra $4 or $4.45 to have an extra 55 characters customized, which,
Yeah.
I think, especially for a child, to hear their name in the book would just be, mind blowing. So I would highly recommend. That's what my kids will be getting for their Christmas. So I just hope it's going to be here in time. That's the only thing, because we're only a few weeks away. So
Right.
it might not be. So we'll wait. But everything will be in the description, guys. The quiz, the links for the website, the program, everything. I would highly recommend it. Jump on Giants TV on YouTube. There's so much amazing content on there. Lots of interviews with some great guests, great people, lots of knowledge, plenty of insight. And Nick, you're doing an amazing thing for the world, and I will support any way I can. 100%. I'm totally on board with the philosophy you've got. Everything. It is a movement, and I'm behind you 100%, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to have you on board with us. And for those that are also watching, go join our Tribe of Giants on Facebook. It's a global community, and it's a place to really anchor in what we're talking about here.
Yep. And I'm a member, so I'll put the link in the description on that as well.
Awesome. Okay, Lachlan, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, brother. I just want to close with a big, massive thank you. See, Project Reinvented has never been about me. It's always been about you, the listener who's looking to improve their life. So with that, I just want to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for not only listening, but your continued support. Project Reinvented wouldn't exist without your presence, so thank you. My goal is to make this as personal to you as possible, so your feedback is invaluable to me, always welcomed and always appreciated. So as we go on this journey together, remember, the art of reinvention doesn't always demand big, massive leaps. See, big change starts with small steps. So think about this. What's one small action you can take today that will reignite your journey of life reinvention? Make that decision to take that step. See, life's a canvas, reinvention's the art, and you're the artist. So start creating. See you next week.